do the Right, welcome to Overdose and Chill. This is episode number 86. I'm Martin, the Technical Director for Overdose Australia, and today I'm lucky to be joined by the one and only Gavin Ballard from Disco Labs and Submarine. Before I get Gavin to introduce himself, we're broadcasting live on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. We love questions, so jump in on whatever platform you're on and start feeding them through. We'll try and do a few questions throughout and have some extra time for questions at the end. So just to give Gavin a quick intro, Gavin and I have been crossing paths at Shopify events and working on projects together for several years. Starting off with all the humble Shopify meetups in Melbourne, which Gavin used to organise, through to trips to Canada for Shopify Unite and various other things in between. Over the last couple of years, obviously we haven't had quite so much of that, so that makes it an extra pleasure to be spending this time together today. What we're going to do is we're going to try and just cover off as much, a few topics about Shopify, talk a little bit about our history with the platform, and our various experiences, and also, look to the future, I guess, and predict the future of e-commerce on Shopify or something grand like that. So welcome, Gavin. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much, Martin. High bar set A by the intro video, and then B, defining the future of Shopify and e-commerce. I mean, that's a high bar to set for a 40, 50-minute chat, but we'll see what we can do.
Yeah. And to start off, I believe your daughter's first birthday today as well, so we better do a big shout out. And
it is, yes. Shout out to Cecilia. She's been shipped off to daycare, but she had a opportunity to open a few presents this morning. So it's lovely.
Oh, that's good. We're not going to have a 1-year-old at mine either today. Mine's been shipped off for this as well. So we should be able to keep it professional for the hour, hopefully, without any little ones crawling in around.
Absolutely.
So to get started, I thought, let's go back to the start. I'd love to just hear the Disco Labs story and how you came to be here today. It's been probably one of the longer journeys of people working with Shopify, I'd say.
Well, that makes me feel old, but I do feel that way sometimes. But my background is as a software engineer. I worked at a couple of startups here in Australia, and then went off and did the digital nomad thing. And while I was doing that, I was freelancing and just sort of fell into the Shopify ecosystem. That was maybe 11, 12 years ago, so pretty early on. And I just really loved the ecosystem. It was pretty nascent back then, so it was really just getting to learn the tools of the trade and how people were building things and contributing that and hacking around the platform. And you could you ran into a problem with Liquid, you could ask a question in the forums and Toby would come in and answer. And that they were the kind of early heady days. And did that for a little while. And then the next natural evolution was to start an agency. I had sort of done a bit of speaking and blogging and written a couple of books on theme development and just general app development for Shopify. So was getting a lot more inquiries or queries that I could support. Started building out the agency. That's where sort of Disco Labs originated. But because of my software engineering background and what I was interested in, we really tried to focus on the custom app and integration space versus front-end design, theme builds, that kind of thing. And really, that led to working with typically larger merchants. So we work with a lot of Shopify Plus merchants because they tend to be the ones that run into challenges with custom app needs or integration needs. Sort of did that for the last 6 years or so. got to work with a bunch of different great agencies, Overdose included, of course, and a lot of great merchants across the globe, whether that was like Hasbro in the States or JB Hi-Fi here in Australia when they moved over to Shopify, U Foods up in Brisbane, Fashion Nova, like a lot of the biggest brands that run on the Shopify platform. And so, yeah, been doing that quite happily for the last 5 or 6 years. But just recently we have started pivoting the company a bit to focus on becoming more of a product company. And that's all centered around our platform Submarine, which is something that we built internally over the last few years to really service the needs of those larger merchants, those ones that are kind of doing 10 million a year and up in revenue, that have more complex requirements. And it's really specifically centered around commerce experiences that are more than just a one-time purchase experience. So subscriptions, pre-sales, crowdfunding, also looking at things like upsells, saving cards for use later, leasing models, try before you buy, a whole range of different things. So we sort of built that up internally to deliver those really flexible experiences for these bigger merchants. And we're now sort of seeing the opportunity in that and jumping into that headfirst. So we're kind of all in on that as a platform and doing the work now to make that more broadly accessible to other agencies and merchants. It was a very long elevator pitch, wasn't it? But
yeah. No, it's a great story, and we've obviously worked together with a few implementations of Submarine and a few other projects. I'd love to just hear about what made you decide to double down on going all in with Submarine. Obviously, it's a pretty competitive space in subscriptions, and there's a few big players like the Recharges of the world who sort of owned that space. What made you call?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the big things has been that like running an agency for the last 2 years, covering the pandemic period, just tough on everyone. I mean, we were lucky we were in an industry that saw massive growth. Being in the tech industry in general, didn't have to be as worried about our jobs, and working from home was all good, but it didn't stop the fact that just doing that for a couple of years in a pandemic, really, it does make you think about, okay, what's the thing that's most exciting from a work perspective, what gets us up in the morning. And a big part of that for us was this product that we had. We'd been building it up within the agency. It was still very service driven in terms of how we rolled it out, but we were adding to it over time. We were billing for it like it's a product. And to be honest, like everyone in the company was really excited about the opportunity to work on it and to further it, and looking at what its potential growth could be and where we think we can get to, and the vision we have for it as a platform at the end of the day. That was what was really exciting. So it less became a question of should we do this at a certain point, but like how do we go from being an agency to focusing on this product, make that transition while not leaving it about any of our existing clients in the lurch or anything like that, making sure we finish off the projects we had in flight, and being able to financially make that transition, because being an agency, you're making money is coming in the door, and then when you go to product, there's a bit of a dip, and even though we're generating revenue with it, it's a different ramp up speed for that sort of revenue. So but yeah, at the end of the day, it came down to, this is what we're most interested in, this is what we're excited about, this is the vision that we have for it, and that's really exciting. So let's work out how to make it happen. And it's been a longer process than we thought initially, as everything is. But we're in a position where a few months ago we shipped our last non-submarine related project for a client. We started last year running about 90 apps for various clients and things like that, and we're down to now about like 5 or 6. So we've really put in the hard yards to make that transition, which is exciting. And then to answer your other question, which I think was why this specific problem it's a very crowded space. I think it's true that the Shopify app store and the ecosystem in general is quite competitive, and in subscriptions, especially with the release of Shopify subscription APIs a couple of years ago, there were kind of these two big incumbents in Recharge and Bold, and everyone's sort of seen the opportunity to build something that's better or a slightly different take on how subscriptions work. And yeah, you've got a lot of new apps in the market now, and that's a good thing. Like it's I think it's going to be forcing a lot more innovation, people to be thinking a lot more about the customer experience and what you can do with it. But I think one of the things about that app store is it is very much geared towards an off-the-shelf sort of mentality, which is, and that's absolutely right, I think, because the Shopify ecosystem, Shopify as a platform itself, is designed to meet the needs of 80% of the merchants on the platform off the shelf. So if you want to start a business, you can spin up Shopify. You'll have basically everything you need. You might add a couple of apps, but even when you're adding those apps, they're kind of designed to be one-click install, and now I have a feature and I can ship that to a merchant, and it's really, really quick, and you get 90% of the way to what you need, and that's great. But the pain point that we're addressing is really coming from merchants who are not in that 80%. And realistically, the merchants that we've worked with over the past many years have been the ones that are kind of up in that 5%, maybe even 2% at the top end of merchants who are large businesses who are either like migrating over to Shopify from a legacy environment, or they've grown up on Shopify, but they've got to a stage where there's complexity in their business, and that means that the way that their subscription or the pre-sale or the crowdfunding or any of their apps function requires a lot of sophistication, requires a lot of flexibility. And then on the other side of it, the way that they present that experience, whether it's subscriptions or crowdfunding or pre-sales to customers, has to be really tailored to their brand. In terms of, this is the subscription program. This is what you get over time. This is how it changes over the time. This is how you can manage that subscription. This is how a crowdfunding experience runs in our site. All of that sort of stuff, that customer experience needs to be really flexible. And that's the position that we're coming from, is we're not a one-click install solution. We are a platform. You install and get us set up on your Shopify store, but that then gives you the base to build exactly what you need as a merchant or as an agency partner that's building something for a merchant. And that, I think, is kind of quite an underserved market, and that's where we want to focus and where we want to play. So again, that was a very long elevator pitch for summary, but hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, it was a bit of a loaded question because I knew the answer to it. But
you were setting it.
I think the point of difference is really, really important there, because there are, like, we've got clients who jump on and use Recharge and just set it up and can run really big businesses through there and churn through lots of subscriptions. But that gap, we constantly come across people who they've got a custom product offering, or want to offer custom bundles or really unique promotional pricing and that sort of stuff, and the value they get out of having that option to essentially open up everything and build their own customer journey. There's a huge opportunity for that. And we're seeing, I think we're talking about 2 or 3 different projects at the moment where they've just, the fit just isn't there with the out of the box solutions. And I think I'm really interested to hear too a bit about some of the other stuff you're looking to build into it as well, because I think we're seeing a real trend in people not just building a Shopify store and having 30 or 40 apps on their store, which is probably the way the world was a couple of years ago. We'd inherit a store, you'd build a store, and there'd be the need for just so many different apps. But people are now looking to use a smaller number of apps that do more things. And so I'd love to hear about some of the other things you were talking about, like the upsells and crowdfunding and some of the other features that you're building out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And for the record, I should say, I think Recharge is an awesome app. I think all of the subscription apps on the App Store are really great solutions for a lot of merchants in a lot of situations. It's really just where you run into those limitations, and where there's value to be captured by having a little more flexibility. And that's kind of where we want we want to have an offering. So like I said, we consider ourselves as sort of a platform with multiple products within that. So subscription is one product, pre-sales is one product, crowdfunding is one product. Those three are kind of the core ones that we've implemented to date. But along with them come some other fundamental building blocks that people can use to build their own experiences on. So all of those things require tokenizing a customer's credit card or payment method and being able to use that at a later date. So within the platform, we also expose that functionality so that as an agency or as a merchant, you can say, I want to store customer payment methods, present them to the user inside of their customer account section. I can charge them at a later date in different situations. So that actually opens you up to a lot of flexibility around. We've had merchants that have come over to Shopify from an external platform. They've actually got a complete logic system external to Shopify that's running, say, their pre-sales campaign that knows this is when this product is ready to be released. Therefore, this is when we want to charge it. This is when we want to ship it. And that logic is all quite complex, but it lives outside of Shopify. They've already built it. They've spent the time to build out the system that does that. So where we come into play is purely as making that something that's accessible within the Shopify context, which is we can handle the card tokenization, we can store those payment methods, we can make it possible for you to trigger that payment at the right time. So again, that's the sort of thing that you're just not going to be able to do with an off-the-shelf solution. And what we're doing is just opening up the APIs to make that possible for more technically sophisticated merchants and devs. But yeah, I definitely certainly see us over time building out that product range. So I mentioned we've got subscriptions, pre-sales, crowdfunding. We've got that card tokenization piece. And so that sort of leads to you being able to do stored cards and stored payment method functionality. Upsells is something that we're actually just about to release, which is kind of exciting. I think the production deploy is literally happening this afternoon. But that's for merchants who are using Shopify multi-currency, and the current post-promotion, post-checkout promotions and upsells only works in this native store currency. So we have a solution that'll let you use it for your alternate currencies. And again, with a lot of flexibility around what products you're upselling and how that works. So we have upsells products. Down the line, we want to move into things like leasing models for businesses that have leasing as a core business offering. Try before you buy for fashion and apparel brands. So it's something that's able to coordinate that would be really interesting. Raffles, so sort of like a pre-sales, but a pre-sale where a limited number of people are able to actually purchase the item. And then even maybe further down the line, looking at giving merchants the tools to build out their own marketplaces, so to sort of control that aftermarket and have a branded experience around marketplaces. So there's a product roadmap that's like 20 years long, but we definitely see the thing that unifies all of those as those commerce experiences that are more than a one-time transaction with the customer, and that we think it's really becoming more and more important as a brand to have those offerings. Customer retention is really, really critical, especially with cost of acquisition going up so much. You look at a lot of the data, successful e-com brands, something like 50+% of their revenue is coming from returning customers. So making the most of the customers you've actually managed to acquire is really important. And I remember seeing a report that by 2023, I think something like 75% of merchants will be using some form of subscription offering or paid memberships or crowdfunding or pre-sale, or something that is a bit more than your standard transaction. So we definitely see it as something that's only going to become more and more important to brands.
Yeah, and I think those sort of more complex things beyond just the straight out subscription also provide a lot of different opportunities, like things that capture first party data and things that create that maximize those initial transactions and move people away from relying on Facebook and Google to drive all the traffic and revenue, which just get more and more expensive.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I think brands very much like this zero party or first party data is becoming really important. But then it's also, what do you actually do with that data, right? It's all fine and good to get some insights into where your customers are coming from or why they purchase or what their preferences are. But then having tools that actually let you leverage that, and having tools that like actually understand the type of product that you're selling. And the example I always use in that instance is a nappy subscription, because as you mentioned up top, it's relatively recent dad. And I have a nappy subscription with the brand, but it's very much like you get the same SKU every 2 or 3 weeks. And what we're trying to build is a platform that is going to let the merchant really tell us, okay, what type of product this is, who is the actual customer, and understand this is a subscription for a human being that is growing over time. Therefore, the nappy they need will change, but also at 6 months, you can upsell them on a teething ring. You can start bringing in like baby food, complementary products, all that sort of stuff, the sort of thing that is ultimately going to lead to greater order value, greater customer retention, because it's more useful for the customer at the end of the day. So I think that sort of stuff and being able to leverage that first party data to do that is really interesting and important.
And isn't it amazing how as soon as you've got a child, every analogy you have comes back to something that relates to nappies or baby products or.
My other go-to is wine subscriptions, and that has not dropped off post having a baby. So that's one for the adults. Yeah.
No, absolutely. In fact, you need to make sure you've always got your liquor cabinet topped up.
Indeed, very important.
Great. So I thought we might sort of pivot a little bit and move away from submarine. Or I'm sure we'll have, if anyone has any questions about submarine, make sure you get them in, and we'll come back to those. I thought it'd be good just to sort of talk back. I thought, given we've both been working with Shopify for quite a long time, love to just hear about sort of some of the things that have changed over the last 5 to 10 years, and where it's come from, and what the sort of the key changes you've seen are.
Yeah, I mean, it's because it's been 10 or 11 years, it's been quite a lot. I guess the fundamental idea of Shopify in terms of being a SaaS platform that makes it really easy to get up and running and selling, that hasn't changed. That's I guess kind of their core thing. So I think that has remained pretty static. But there's obviously been a lot of stuff going on around that. I think from like a technical and a platform perspective, I mean, the scope of features within the core platform has grown quite a lot. So whether it's things like adding the subscriptions API, starting to add in more nuanced support around fulfillment sort of stuff, Shopify Audiences just launched with sort of marketing and advertising sort of stuff, much broader range of APIs and more accessible APIs and for different devices and things like that. That's certainly grown quite a lot. Also, like looking at the merchant base, that's grown crazily. I mean, 10 or 11 years ago, it was basically your US, Australia, UK, and then a few quirky places like Germany. And obviously that's changed very significantly, in that they've made a lot of effort to roll out more localized solutions for different markets. It's a much more international product these days. It's probably still one of the places where it's roughest around the edges is the internationalization, but I think that it's catching up a bit there. But you've got like massive adoption in Japan and Southeast Asia and or EMEA in general. So I think it's really become a lot more global since over the last 10 years. And then the type of merchant, I think, has changed as well. So it's still a really good fit for someone who wants to get up and running with their garden shed business, but it's also equally as viable a solution for really large enterprises. And I mentioned JB Hi-Fi before, who, they're a brand that does $1 billion a year in online sales. When they started their migration or started thinking about it maybe 5 years ago, Shopify probably wasn't a product that was a great fit, but now that they're on there, it's handling that, and it's quite a successful migration. So I think the size, I think Shopify has definitely lost its, we're just for the mum and dad shops now. I think it's moved to more being a serious player across the spectrum of e-com businesses. So that, fairly big difference.
Yeah, I think like JB Hi-Fi and those sort of brands coming across too just gave so much confidence to other businesses to follow suit. I think having a leader like that, like almost every time we meet a new client, they reference something from JB Hi-Fi that they want to copy, and I think them moving across there it gives people a huge amount of confidence in the platform. And I think also just the number of people that come to us now who have already made the decision that they're going to move to Shopify, and they're really educated about what the pros and cons of being on a SaaS platform are, and they're prepared to adapt to the way the Shopify platform works a lot more. Whereas 5 years ago, it was a lot. Yeah, we had to do a lot more selling of the platform to people, and come up with some really crazy solutions to stuff to try and fit their requirements. Whereas I think the maturity of just businesses have been doing e-commerce for a lot longer now as well, so have a much better idea of what they want and can have much more constructive conversations with people than what we probably had when it was still seen as that garden shed platform, I guess, as you call it.
Yeah, that's interesting to me. I think that's something that we've, if you're looking at like larger projects that are successful or unsuccessful, depending on your definition, I think one of the things that is definitely a hallmark of the more successful migrations or new sites that are getting stood up on Shopify is like a willingness within the business to be adaptable. And we've certainly had clients that have come with a very, very strict set of RFP requirements, and nothing is negotiable. And it's like, well, it has to work this way for this, and this. And at a certain point, going to almost any platform, that is going to break unless you're building something very, very customized. And then certainly coming to a Shopify platform, going in with that very strict RFP list of requirements, and probably more things that are focused on very technical outcomes that they need, because that's the way the workflow's always worked. I think that always leads to tears, whereas the brands that we've seen that have been very successful, even if they're large enterprisey businesses, have come in with a bit of a, well, this is the outcome that we want to get to. How do we do that on Shopify in the nicest way? So rather than specifying this is how the workflow needs to happen, you're like, this is the outcome. Can we do it on Shopify? How do we do it? And the fact that Shopify is more and more flexible over time, I think, means that there are ways to achieve almost everything that people need, but doing it in a way that's quite platform native, which is what you want to shoot for.
Yeah, RFP, every agency's favourite acronym. There's nothing better than receiving an RFP with about 20 tabs, and everything has to be either ticked as out of the box or custom, and everything in between. It's not no one's favourite process to go through that one. I guess that's probably another good reason for going product side.
Yeah. Oh, yes. That's, we're building a product that is hopefully aiming to solve that problem for agencies like Overdose when they get that RFP and they see a subscriptions list that is like 40 lines long, and you folks can just be like, oh, well, cool. We know that will be covered by Submarine because it's by far the best and most flexible platform out there, is what we're shooting for. Not saying that we're all the way there, and it's one of those things products are never done, which is maybe a difference to a client project. Is just like you ship it, but then you have to ship it again the next day. We're getting back onto Submarine. We should be talking about Shopify.
No, that's right. No, and I think the RFP process. I think the one thing I've learnt too is the maturity to push back on something in an RFP and ask why is pretty important as well, because that sometimes they don't our job's to make sure that we're suggesting the best solutions, not just what it currently is, and be apologetic for the platform when it doesn't do anything. There's no point in doing that. It doesn't really lead to good outcomes.
Yeah. Well, that circling back, I think to what we were talking about before in terms of changes in Shopify over the past 10 years, I think that feeds into another thing, which is around like how the ecosystems changed over the past decade. And I would certainly say like the scale of businesses that can be supported inside the ecosystem and the size of agencies. And obviously Overdose isn't a exclusively Shopify agency, and there are lots out there that aren't, but there's certainly big agencies that are doing serious work that have sort of grown within the Shopify ecosystem or entered the Shopify ecosystem because they see the opportunity there. So I think the ecosystem has certainly gotten a lot more mature in the last, well, obviously over the last 10 years, but even over the last sort of 3 or 4, you've got some of the biggest agencies in e-com in the world that are big players in the Shopify space, and you've got lots of acquisitions and acqui-hires and things like that going on in the space at the moment. So that's changed a fair bit, I think.
Yeah, no, definitely. And like I think Melbourne, I'd say, is probably one of the strongest cities in the world for Shopify agencies. Like we've seen such an amazing network of different people come up through that and go off in lots of different paths. And yeah, I know that the people that we that they are competitors, I guess, but also it's always you don't necessarily feel so bad losing out to some of these people who you've seen also come up on the same journey.
Yeah, I wonder if that's I guess because we've always been in a bit of an odd spot from an agency perspective in that we were very focused on the back end, and so often it would happen that in APAC, large merchant might come in, complex requirements, those needs to go out to 3 different sort of front end full build agencies. And we'd probably get the call from all 3 of them around the custom app or integration requirements. So we kind of, no matter who won that one, we were winning, which was a nice place to be in, but also I guess kind of it actually worked pretty well within the Shopify ecosystem, because I think it was and is still pretty collaborative. Like we know the other agency owners in APAC, we catch up with them, we're pretty good friends with a lot of them. But yeah, I do wonder if maybe that is starting to drift off a little bit in the Shopify space, which is maybe a natural evolution of the size of the ecosystem and its growth. But I think that there maybe is a bit of more of a slightly more competitive edge in the agency space. In the app store, certainly, it seems to be highly competitive now, and there's lots of dirty tricks being used in fake reviews and taking people's apps down and things like that, which is a bit sad to see, but I guess it's kind of like a sign of a maturing ecosystem. But
yeah, there are some really big players in that app ecosystem now, and it's probably a little bit. I think there's 10,000 apps in the Shopify App Store now. I saw the other day, which is pretty competitive. But yeah, it's the good thing is it also means we've got multiple partners to choose from for most of them, and that there's such an amazing selection. Like when it comes to building out reviews, you've got great local startups like a Kendo that have come up the ranks, and then also the big players like Yotpo are bringing the multi features and all of that sort of stuff. And we're lucky to have it's great having relationships and partnerships with all of those platforms.
Yeah, I definitely feel like, and probably as Shopify Plus partners and focus more on that end of the town, I think it does feel like there's a bit of a bifurcation in the market, in that you've got your Plus apps and the ones like your Kendos and your Yotpos and the name brands that that will have partner managers and account managers and that sort of thing. And then there's the rest of the App Store, which is probably more focused on the people who are getting up and running and starting stuff themselves, which is, and both of them are pretty valuable to the Shopify ecosystem. It's just interesting that it's kind of maybe feels like there's more of a division between those two than there were, 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, and I think we still find though that a lot of the big merchants still want to have that like cost of ownership still a real thing for them as well. So we often find that we'll have a stack where we might be using like a Nosto or Yotpo on a store, but then we'll also we often use Boost Commerce still for our search, which is a $50 a month search app, which does the job for most. And especially if you've got 3 or 4 stores, those costs can blow out if you're with a more enterprise tool. So it's a really interesting challenge is defining the stack and working out where people invest their resources.
Yeah. Well, and especially if you're making the pitch to migrate from Magento to Shopify Plus because you're spending $50,000 a month on the hosting and maintenance of Magento, which is quite a common occurrence. Then you can say, we can go to Shopify, but if your total cost of ownership with all your apps, and if you pick all the enterprise ones, and it's like, it's still $30,000 a month. So I think that is definitely a factor to consider, and like just because an app is $50 a month doesn't mean that it doesn't do its job and do it well, for sure.
Absolutely. And I thought it'd be worth having a bit of a chat too, just about sort of looking forward. I know it's sort of I sort of call it unofficially Shopify's announcement season, because it's sort of around the time when Unite would normally happen, and it would have been nice if they held that over in Canada this year and we could escape this Melbourne weather to get over there. But I know there's a few things sort of in the pipeline that we're waiting for. What are the sort of things you're most looking forward to?
That's a good question. And I'm trying to think about the stuff that I have an idea that's coming that I can't talk about publicly, or the stuff that being sort of flagged. I think, I don't think wouldn't be any surprises about some of the stuff that are working around checkout. So like a new version of checkout. I know people have been posting publicly about that. So something that's a little more, I don't want to say single page, but faster, smoother, sleeker. But I think the biggest question for the sorts of merchants that we work with is going to be, how are they going to be able to make that still quite customizable and give merchants the control they need over that, because that's always a bit of a tension, and I think that's become a tension that's become more intense over the last couple of years, is Shopify wanting to be able to, I don't want to say lock down the platform, but have a bit more tighter control over it, to make it easier for them to push updates and develop things, which is understandable, but then also the needs of merchants, and especially larger ones like ours, who they know what they want their brand experience, know what they want their customer experience to be, so they really need a platform that's going to let them achieve that and not hamstring them. So I think that's how they're going to resolve that over the next 6 months, 12 months, is something that I'm more interested in than necessarily what specific APIs are going to ship. I am excited that this is a very minor technical bugbear, but adding in details about the logged in customer into the app proxies, which is, I posted a blog about this, I think it was 8 years ago or 7 years ago, requesting this exact feature, and somehow eventually that's filtered through, and there is a someone's done the work and it's shipping in July, which is very exciting. So that's interesting. But what about B2B will be interesting as well, actually. It's been a long promised improvement area for Shopify, and they acquired Handshake platform a few years ago. And that didn't, I think, translate into a really great wholesale or B2B experience off the bat. So how that rolls out and what's going to be possible there will be interesting.
Yeah, I think B2B is easily the new, like, it's online store 2.0 was sort of the one that was on everyone's mind for a long time and took a couple of years to come, and made a lot of people happy when it did arrive. And I'd say B2B is easily that next big one off the ranks. Once something comes out there, I think that's going to be really exciting, and hopefully knock off one of the big that's probably the big thing that stops people from moving to the Shopify platform at the moment. So I think that'll be exciting.
It's definitely one of those things that is one of those things that'll make us often say, look, question, is this going to be a good fit for Shopify? Whereas most other sort of setups, you can be like, well, we know we can do X, Y, and Z. But yeah, B2B and marketplaces are kind of the two places where flags get raised, I think, in terms of the current state of the platform. But yeah, is there anything particular outside of B2B that you're interested in?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward. I don't know how soon it's happening on the roadmap, but Shopify Scripts looks like it's going to be replaced at some point. And yeah, Scripts has been really powerful in terms of making, like being able to customize price rules and all of that sort of stuff. But it also isn't very client friendly, and it's one of those things where just the version control of it, and for businesses that have really complex promotions, it can be a real point of pain, and it's something that developers can easily slip up on. So I'm hoping to see something a bit more component based there that gives merchants more power over their promotions.
Okay, just something sort of like Shopify Flow, but for that logic. Custom logic around pricing and things like that? Or?
Yeah, like something like that, I think would be, like that's another real pain point, I think, for merchants, where it sucks for a merchant having to come to an agency to set up a promo or just a discount rule and stuff like that, which, a lot of the time they seem very simple and should be easy to configure, like you configure a discount code. But so it'll be interesting to watch that space and see what comes there. And you touched on marketplaces. I think that's another really, like we're working with a few different projects with Marketplacer at the moment. And yes, looking forward to road testing some of the marketplace APIs and stuff like that. Because there's, I think as it comes down again, people want to try and get more products to their customers and reduce that reliance on just going out there and advertising and having to stock everything and all that sort of stuff, so that can really make an improvement to businesses in that next phase. So looking forward to seeing that as well. I think we're starting to get to sort of the last quarter here. So I thought I had one more topic I wanted to cover off, and then also have a chat to I have a chance to get any questions in. So if anyone does have any questions, make sure you fire them through, and we'll get to those in a minute. But I thought I didn't want us to just be drinking the Shopify Kool-Aid on this call. So I thought we should finish off with just sort of talking about any things that really frustrate us about the Shopify platform, just to show that we are objective and not just not just flying the flag.
Oh, we could have left half an hour for this easily.
Apologies if there's anyone from Shopify watching in.
I don't think anyone needs to hear our loving Shopify credentials. We wouldn't have been around in the ecosystem this long if we didn't believe in it and obviously be big champions for it. But I mean, as with everything, there's limitations and drawbacks. I think. I think I touched on one of the things that sort of is and touches us quite a bit, which is where that platform is getting closed down a bit. So things like checkouts, things like payments, which is a space that we play in quite a bit. And Shopify wanting to have more control over that is understandable to an extent. But I do feel like sometimes the balance they're striking is more about what is good for Shopify versus what is good for the merchant. And, I think there's an element of, it's their platform, so they can sort of shape that how they want. But I think it is not always driven by what's the best result for the merchant, but what's the best result for Shopify. And especially now that I think over the last couple of years, they've sort of realized that they're actually primarily a payments company versus an e-com platform. So much of their revenue comes from Shopify payments and taking a clip of the GMV that goes through their merchant stores, which is like a great business model and makes a lot of sense. And ShopPay is awesome. But whether that's shading some decisions is a question mark that I'd have. But stuff that's all manageable and overcome, they can just be frustrating sometimes.
Yeah. Look, I guess it keeps us in a job as well, because every time a new feature comes out, like Shopify Markets is a good example of that as well, where it sounds like it's going to solve all the problems of internationalization, but what it actually just does is gives us something else to sit down with clients and work out what the best fit solution is for them. And sometimes we've still got a lot of clients who, despite markets being probably great for a business that wants to expand into a new market, it's probably not so good for businesses that have got 3PLs in 3 different regions and custom product offerings and even things like seasonality. So it's there's never I don't feel like it's going to mature to the point where we don't have plenty of work on any time in the near future.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's it. Is for any agency or consultant or tech person in the space, it's never going to be something that's going to do you out of a job. It's just going to make you move on to the next thing that's burning. Another thing this is probably just a frustration shared by basically everyone in the ecosystem and probably a lot of people in Shopify themselves, is the feature roadmap and the timelines for shipping stuff. And I'm saying this as a software developer, software is very, very hard, and software at the scale of Shopify is exceptionally hard. But things like Online Store 2.0, which I think was promised for about 3 years before it shipped. Things like Shopify Scripts, which was sort of previewed as in beta this time a year ago. The visibility into the roadmap is good, but without any sort of concrete stuff to pin your hat on, it can be quite difficult when you're talking to customers about it or clients about it and saying, okay, well, this is coming, but we sort of don't know when. So that can be a bit tricky to navigate sometimes.
Yeah. And I know the guys at Shopify, they struggle with it a little bit too sometimes. And it's always interesting when something new does come. And like unboxing Online Store 2.0 was fun when it did come. And hopefully we've got some new things like B2B to be unboxing soon, and sharing with all our different merchants and solving some new problems. So I think we're going to start wrapping up in a minute. I think we've got a hard finish of midday Melbourne time. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to shoot them through. Otherwise, we'll start to wrap up soon, I think.
While we're waiting to see if anyone does have a question, it's a rainy Wednesday morning in Melbourne, so I imagine people's question asking is probably the lowest ebb. I guess a question for you, Martin, just general, what's the coolest thing that you're working on at the moment in the Shopify space? I'm actually really enjoying some of the stuff we're doing with marketplaces at the moment, and looking at how to architect different solutions in terms of building marketplaces that feed into sort of multiple brands and multiple Shopify instances. We're seeing some really interesting problems to solve in terms of that stack design at the moment. We see businesses that have lots of, they might have multiple brands and multiple regions and then multiple marketplace sources. So it's, it means lots of time spent doing flow charts and all that sort of stuff. But I think it's, it's really interesting to map that out and see what kind of opportunities arise. But then, the other thing that I've really enjoyed over the last year is actually just getting back with Online Store 2.0 coming out. We really worked hard on trying to make that front end experience for merchants as smooth as possible, and build out getting back to sort of the basics of the platform and building out a good CMS within Shopify, and trying to keep clients that can continue to use that without having to go down the headless path necessarily, and end up with we're seeing now we're launching stores that have they pass the core web vitals by default, and the client doesn't need to use a page builder and doesn't need to have anywhere near as many apps as they perhaps needed to have. So I enjoy sort of solving those problems and trying to make it simpler for merchants, and I feel like we've got a much better
such a much better starting place for doing that these days, which means we can be focusing on growth stuff on top of that, which is it's not the most exciting thing to talk about, but it is. I think it does give really good outcomes, and that's what we try to do.
Yeah, cool. Do you think online, and I know we're about to wrap up, but do you think that online store 2.0 has kind of nixed a bit of the impetus or momentum for headless in the Shopify space? And there's implied quotation marks around headless when I say
And I think what we're going to see now is I feel like there are quite a few merchants out there who jumped on headless maybe a little bit too early and sort of did it for the sake of it. And I think they've sort of got to the point where they've now got a Shopify instance and a CMS that they're managing completely independently from each other and potentially asking why. But I think what we're going to sort of start to see now is people doing headless for good reasons, and whether that's spinning up multiple CMSs with a single instance of Shopify, or using it for creating really custom user experiences and that sort of stuff. But I think there's most merchants I think can be pretty well serviced by the out of the box Shopify platform, and the benefits of having everything in one place, and having a simple deployment process and good steady as she goes theme editor with really good flexibility. I think there's a lot of benefit to that. Plus the app ecosystem and just the number of things that you can just drop into a Shopify theme, like your reviews platform and your wish lists and loyalty and those sort of things now, where you don't need to configure that, and it barely involves any involvement from us in terms of setting that type of stuff up. So I think there's I'm interested to see the space evolve there, because I think there'll be some really interesting implementations and maturity of headless over the next 6 to 12 months as different people adopt it. And I think there's also a lot of businesses that are really that have traditionally been on sort of other bigger enterprise platforms who are seeing the benefits of moving to a SaaS platform, and how much easier it can make running their own business to be within the confines of Shopify, and not having to worry about things like the checkout reliability and upgrades and all of that sort of stuff that you don't need to think about in Shopify. So I think it's a really interesting time for the platform and just e-commerce in general.
Oh, that seems like a perfect place to wrap up. I agree wholeheartedly.
I guess that's why we're both doing this. But I think we're nearly on the hour. So thank you so much for joining us today. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and hopefully, everyone who's watching has as well. Where's the best place to find you? Do they follow you on Twitter or LinkedIn? Find
me on Twitter. I'm at Gavin Ballard. I'm basically the same on LinkedIn as well. I'm an infrequent poster, but I when it comes, it's very good. So worth a follow.
Cool. No, absolutely. And thanks everyone for listening in, and hopefully you've enjoyed some of the stuff we've talked about here today. And have a great day. If you're in Melbourne like us, stay warm, and if you're somewhere warmer, good on you. All right, that was a smooth wrap up. Thanks everyone. And we'll speak to you soon, Gavin.
Thanks so much, Martin. Thanks.